On the north side of one of Britain's oldest buildings is a door, and on that door is a face. A grotesque bronze face, jaws wide open, swallowing a man whole while snakes devour his legs from below. This face has a ring gripped between its teeth, and for centuries, if you were a killer, a thief, a man who had just taken another man's life and was being chased through the streets, with blood still on your hands, this ring was the only thing standing between you and the hangman. This is Durham Cathedral, a Norman fortress of God sat on a rocky peninsula high above the River Wear. Built between 1093 and 1133 to house the relics of two saints, UNESCO calls it the largest and most perfect monument of Norman architecture in England. It contains the earliest surviving example of a large-scale stone-ribbed vault ceiling in the country, a feat of engineering so audacious that it shaped the course of European architecture for the next 4 centuries. Its foundation stone was laid on the 11th of August 1093, almost 1,000 years ago, and for over 900 of those years, this door held a power that overruled the entire English legal system. This is the story of how one door saved hundreds of criminals across the medieval period, and it starts not with the door itself, but with the man buried inside. Most visitors to Durham Cathedral enter through this north door and walk straight past the bronze ring without a second thought. Some stop to take a photograph, a few grab the ring and pose. But here is what almost none of them realise. This ring on the door is a replica. It was placed here in 1980. The original 12th century sanctuary ring is inside the cathedral, behind glass, in the open treasure museum housed within the medieval Great Kitchen. And when you stand in front of the real one, you understand immediately why it has become one of the most recognised objects in English heritage. It is cast in bronze and weighs around 30 kilograms. The face is a hell mouth, a medieval image depicting the literal entrance to hell through the gaping jaws of a beast, a lion haloed by its mane. The man being swallowed is having his feet consumed simultaneously by a double-headed snake that forms the handle. The eyes of the lion are believed to have once contained coloured glass, meaning that when light caught the face at certain angles, it would have appeared alive, moving, watching you. This was deliberate. The design was not merely decorative, it was theological. In medieval Christian imagery, the hellmouth was the gateway to damnation. Anyone wishing to claim sanctuary would hold the ring, symbolically pulling the man from the clutches of hell. They were placing themselves in the hands of God and under the spiritual protection of one saint in particular, and his remains are just meters away from where this ring now sits. St Cuthbert, the great evangelist of Northumbria who died in 687 AD on the island of Innerfarne. His body was carried by monks across the north of England for over a century, fleeing Viking raids, until they finally settled here at Durham in 995. His shrine inside this cathedral became one of the most powerful spiritual sites in medieval England, and the right of sanctuary at Durham was directly tied to his authority. According to a 1593 text called the Rights of Durham, the right of sanctuary here was confirmed not only by King Guthred of Northumbria, but also by King Alfred the Great. In fact, the 37-day time limit itself was apparently set by Cuthbert personally when he appeared in a vision to King Guthred, not 40 days as was standard in most English churches, 37, a number set by a dead saint in a vision and then honoured by the English legal system for centuries. That is extraordinary. But what made Durham truly unique was that it was not just a cathedral. The Bishop of Durham held powers equivalent to a king, a prince bishop. He could raise an army, mint his own coins, and levy taxes. He governed a virtually autonomous state that formed the buffer zone between England and Scotland. So when someone claimed sanctuary at Durham, they were not simply hiding in a church, they were placing themselves under the dual protection of the most powerful spiritual and temporal authority in the north of England. So how did it actually work? And I mean step by step. Picture this. A man has killed someone, perhaps in a brawl, perhaps deliberately. He is being pursued through the narrow streets of Durham, up the hill from the marketplace. Desperate, he reaches the cathedral. He grabs the bronze ring on the north door. Now here is the first detail that most people do not know. The boundary of sanctuary at Durham was not just the cathedral door. The entire city was marked with a series of stone crosses found at Giles Gate, Neville's Cross, and at points further south. Once a fugitive crossed that boundary, he was already within the sanctuary limits and could make his way to the cathedral. But it was taking hold of the ring at the north door that formally announced his claim. Above the door, in 2 small chambers with windows overlooking the entrance, Monks are keeping watch. These rooms were built around 1133 specifically for this purpose. They are staffed around the clock, in shifts, day and night. Their sole function is to watch for fugitives and to let them in promptly. The moment the man is admitted, the Galilee bell is rung across the cathedral to announce that sanctuary has been claimed. The fugitive then confesses his crime. He is stripped of his own clothes and given a black gown with the yellow cross of St Cuthbert sewn onto the left shoulder. He is housed in a cell below the southwest tower, and he is fed food, drink, bedding, all provided at the expense of the monastery. He is kept in an enclosure, separated from the rest of the church until his departure can be arranged. For 37 days, this man is untouchable. During that time, he has two options. He can attempt to reconcile with the family of the person he has harmed and negotiate a settlement, or he can abjure the realm. To abjure the realm meant appearing before the royal coroner, confessing the crime in full, and swearing a solemn oath to leave England forever and never return. Durham was a particularly popular destination for sanctuary seekers, in part because there was regular access to a royal coroner, which meant the process of abjuration could take place more smoothly than at other churches. The coroner would then assign a specific port. Most fugitives at Durham were sent to Hartlepool, roughly 20 miles away, but in at least one recorded case, a coroner sent a man from Durham to Dover, that is 350 miles, on foot, at a required pace of approximately 30 miles per day. The fugitive had to travel along the King's Highway only. He could not stray from the road. If he did, that was punishable by death. But not every person who claimed sanctuary actually left the country. Some used it simply to avoid immediate retribution for their actions. This was especially common among those who admitted to being an accessory to a crime or merely present when a crime was committed, rather than the actual perpetrator. These men would use the 37 days to let tempers cool and then submit to the legal system, rather than flee England entirely. Now here is where this story moves from remarkable to genuinely astonishing. Durham Cathedral kept a register, a sanctuary register. Real names, real crimes, real dates. And this register survives. It records sanctuary petitions from 1464 to 1524, 6 decades of desperate men arriving at this very door. Within those pages are 283 men who admitted to involvement in 195 homicides. Murderers, yes, but also horse thieves, cattle rustlers, debtors, and men who had simply been present when a crime occurred. The entries are written mostly in Latin. Each one records the name of the fugitive, their place of residence, the date and location of the crime, the name of the victim, and the names of the witnesses who heard the confession. Some of these entries are chilling in their matter-of-factness. Thomas Spence of Bowes in Yorkshire sought sanctuary because he had ordered the hanging of a Scotsman called Thomas Meeburn without any lawful trial and feared punishment for it. Others reveal men who had been carrying the weight of their crimes for extraordinary lengths of time. One man confessed to a killing committed 14 years earlier, another 18 years. One came forward about a murder he had committed a full 26 years before. Most claim self-defense. Most describe short-tempered brawls where clubs, swords, staffs and daggers were readily at hand. The clerks who recorded the confessions noted that some men spoke with what they described as much contrition. Others, clearly, did not. But not all were killers. In May of 1497, a man named Coulson of Walsingham in the county of Durham was detected in the act of theft. He was taken and thrown into prison. He then escaped, and he fled straight to Durham Cathedral, where he stood near the shrine of St Cuthbert and requested that a coroner be appointed for him. John Rackett, coroner of the ward of Chesterley Street, came to him. Coulson confessed the felony and took an oath at the very shrine of St Cuthbert to abandon the Kingdom of England and leave it, in the recorded words, with all the speed that he conveniently could, and never to return. A thief, a prison escapee, and the church still took him in. The ring did not distinguish between a man who had killed and a man who had stolen. The door opened for both, and people came from astonishing distances. The register records fugitives from as far as London, Coventry, Ipswich and Lincolnshire. These men walked hundreds of miles to reach this specific door, not to any church, to this one, because St Cuthbert's protection was considered the most powerful sanctuary in the north of England, because the Prince Bishop's authority was unmatched, and perhaps because word had spread that Durham honoured its promise, that when you grabbed that ring, the door opened, every single time. One of the earliest recorded incidents of sanctuary at Durham documented by a 12th century writer called Reginald of Durham, tells of a man accused of killing a youth who was in service to the bishop. He fled to the cathedral and took refuge at the shrine of Cuthbert. Friends of the dead youth formed an armed guard at every entrance and exit. Then, whilst the monks were at supper, 6 armed men forced their way in. 2 of them reached the shrine, where they found the accused in prayer. They wounded him badly. The outrage was immediate and immense. The bishop himself absolved the wounded man, who then made what was described as a miraculous recovery. One of the attackers, who had fled instead of seeking sanctuary, was caught 3 miles away when, according to the account, his horse simply refused to move. He was thrown into an underground prison. The message was unmistakable. Violate the sanctuary, and you face consequences far worse than the fugitive ever would. So what ended it? Henry VIII's break with Rome in the 1530s fatally weakened the system. The dissolution of the monasteries stripped cathedrals of their monastic communities. The monks who had kept watch above this north door were gone. The great machinery of sanctuary, the robes, the register, the Galilee bell, the coroner, the assigned ports, all of it began to fall silent. Criminal sanctuary was chipped away through successive Tudor and Stuart legislation until 1624, when James I formally enacted that, and these are the recorded words: "No sanctuary or privilege of sanctuary shall hereafter be allowed in any case." That was the end. Over 900 years of church sanctuary in England, a tradition traceable all the way back to 693 AD, when Einar, king of the West Saxons, declared that anyone accused of a capital offence who flies to a church shall have his life spared. 9 centuries of that tradition ended in a single parliamentary act. The watchman's chambers above the north door were eventually removed, the register closed, the black gowns were never sewn again, and the bronze ring remained on the door. But it was now just decoration, a 30-kilogram piece of bronze with no legal power, hanging on a door that no longer offered protection to anyone. Standing at this north door today, visitors still reach out and touch the ring. The replica, of course. The real one sits quietly inside, behind glass, worn smooth by the hands of hundreds of desperate men across the medieval centuries. Men who had killed, men who had stolen, men who had done terrible things, and men who had done understandable things in terrible circumstances. The ring did not distinguish, the door did not ask, it simply opened. If you look above the north door now, the wall is flat and plain. There is no trace of the 2 small chambers where monks once sat through the night, listening. No trace of the window through which they watched the street below for a man running for his life. That entire structure was demolished in the late 1700s when the porch was shortened and remodelled. The only evidence that it ever existed is a 19th century sketch and the written record of the rites of Durham. Hundreds of people pass through this doorway every single day and have no idea that 2 monks once lived above their heads for the sole purpose of saving the lives of strangers. That is what makes this more than a piece of medieval metalwork. For over 4 centuries at this specific site, the law of England stopped at this threshold. A man could be guilty of murder, could be pursued by armed men, could have the full weight of the legal system bearing down on him, and all he had to do was touch a bronze ring on a cathedral door in County Durham, and he was safe. For 37 days, on the word of a dead saint, he was safe. This is British heritage at its most extraordinary. Thank you for joining me on this one, folks.